Our first honoree is George Belitsos, the founder of Youth and Shelter Services in Ames. You can start making your way up. Youth and Shelter Services is an organization that has been a safe haven and a powerful voice for LGBTQ rights since its inception. George has been a tireless advocate for youth in just countless ways throughout his years as CEO and now in a retirement characterized by his typical courageous and compassionate activism. I've had the pleasure of knowing George for many years, and he has had a personal impact on my life as well. So thank you so much, George.
Thank you. My deep and heartfelt gratitude to the creators of this awesome award and to those wonderful sponsors for this award. I've been fortunate to be honored in the past for my work in child welfare and civil rights with that highest recognition I've had, being an honorary PhD from Iowa State. But as a gay man, this Legacy Leader Award is especially meaningful to me and a great, great honor. I want to thank my successor and YSS for nominating me. Andrew, please stand. My successor, Andrew Allen. And I want to recognize and thank my husband of 36 years, Dr. Peter Wolf, for supporting me through my career. And Peter, thank you for your continued support, even though I have now flunked retirement. And now serve on 6 nonprofit boards, 2 state commissions, and 1 international anti-slavery board. I no longer say that I am retired. I now say that I am rewired, not retired, as a full-time volunteer. Peter, stand. Please, thank you. 36 years. Thank you. In 1976, while still a graduate student at Iowa State University, I opened Iowa's first runaway and homeless youth shelter. That one little program quickly evolved into a comprehensive child welfare agency with 500 active volunteers, 375 exceptionally hardworking and brilliant staff members, serving 5,000 troubled kids through treatment programs each year, over 10,000 through intervention and prevention programs out of 27 statewide locations. I'm very proud of YSS. 40 years before I founded YSS and opened that very first youth shelter, Iowa opened its first runaway and homeless animal shelter. That's right, 40 years before Iowa's abused, neglected, and homeless youth received safe shelters, animals had a place to turn. We had a lot of catching up to do in Iowa. At that time, 25% of the runaway and homeless youth we served were LGBTQ. Most were running away from relentless bullying and parents who rejected and disowned their own friendless children. In 1976, runaways could still be held in jail and even spend time in the state training school with delinquent youth. Never forget the first LGBT kid that was sent to YSS from the state training school. You don't get out of there easily, but he was an LGBTQ kid who was totally made fun of and abused and pushed around by peers at the state training school, and then finally they put him in, he was a little kid, and they put him in a dryer, a commercial dryer, and turned it on for 15 minutes. Finally, someone at the state training school said we should send him to YSS. Getting back to my script, most were LGBTQ kids, 25%. In 1976, I also had a lot of opportunities presented to me. That's when I first was recognized by Governor Robert Ray, and he was the guiding light to get shelters opened all across Iowa. That year, 5 teens committed suicide while being held in Iowa jails and detention centers, and I know that at least 2 of those kids were kids that were struggling with sexual orientation and identity issues. YSS offered an alternative, providing hope to those whose lives seemed hopeless. From the outset, YSS was known as a welcoming and inclusive agency that provided equality and tolerance. We had strong hiring and client service policies that did not tolerate, zero tolerance for bullying, for bigotry, for homophobia, sexism, racism, or prejudice. Many years later, 2009, YSS continued to stand alone as the only Iowa nonprofit to file an amicus brief supporting the Barnum marriage equality case before the Iowa Supreme Court. Our brief informed the court of studies that demonstrated that lesbian and gay parents were just as capable of succeeding in raising well-adjusted children as were heterosexual parents. For many years, I was Iowa's only nonprofit human service CEO who self-identified as gay. This made for many professional risks and challenges, but also many groundbreaking opportunities. For example, because of my early advocacy and getting known for being an LGBTQ advocate, I was invited to be one of 4 contributing authors to the first positive book about counseling lesbian and gay youth. In 1978, 2 years after I opened YSS, that was the year that Harvey Milk was assassinated. And that tells you a lot about the environment toward, and real hatred toward LGBTQ advocates. Despite this, or maybe because of it, I had good fortune. That very same year, I received a presidential appointment to the National Advisory Committee for Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. I was also invited to serve on the board of the National Network for Youth. The following year, I became the chairperson of the advisory board for the National Institute of Juvenile Justice that did all the research. At all of these meetings, I was able to share the special plight of LGBTQ youth and what needed to change. Despite decades of progress, the motto, hard won, not done, still applies to most child welfare agencies when it comes to our fight to intolerance, bullying, sexism, sexual harassment, and homophobia. Our shelters and group homes are still filled with a disproportionate number of bullies and those carrying the scars of being bullied in the same facility. There's still a deep need for all of us in the helping professions to better address the real suffering and intolerance that LGBTQ children immigrants still face in their community, in their schools, and in their own homes. I frequently compare the work that we did with LGBTQ youth and all the kids as being like being in the weaving business. We took broken threads of young kids' lives and tried to mend them, and then weave that back into a place of the fabric that is a strong community. The more those broken threads are ignored or left to be tortured, they will never mend, and our communities will never mend and be strong as they should be. And those threads, when they're LGBTQ kids, they're more colorful. They have a lot to offer, and they really brighten up that fabric. We live in a country that subtly, and in recent years not so subtly, promotes intolerance, imposes stigma, defends racial and religious bias, and perpetuates fear and hate of people who are different. Despite a lot of recent setbacks, I'll say to you tonight what I used to say to the YSS kids. Setbacks are setups for comebacks. So I call on each of you, and in particular today's graduating Leadership Institute class over there, to rededicate yourself to stand up for equality, for kindness, for tolerance, for LGBTQ rights, with special emphasis right now on our transgender brothers and sisters. Don't forget, November 20th will mark the day of Transgender Day Remembrance. Let's teach our kids that this is one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yes, I said all, not just people who look a certain way or worship a certain way or love a certain way. Thank you.